Welcome back to a new deep dive, and on this occasion is the Model 15 from Behringer. This guide is like a crash course. At the description or the timeline of this video, you have all the different chapters. You can learn about something today and skip the section, or maybe just come back a different day and keep learning. If you like what I do, please like the video, and this channel is supported by viewers only. If you want to buy me a coffee to say thanks and help the channel keep going on, you can. You have links at the description for PayPal, YouTube Thanks, and Patreon. Before we can start, tiny little warning, you have two parts of the synthesizer. You have the main panel with the ARP and the sequence, and then the other one is going to be the ins and the outs. On this video, I will cover everything about the main panel, including the ARP and the sequence. And I will upload a different video, I guess in a couple of days, just talking about the ins and the outs one by one, just like I usually do. You have two oscillators, the oscillator number 1 and the oscillator number 2, and everything you can control it through the mixer. Right here you have the control, the volume control for the oscillator number 1. This one is going to be, of course, the oscillator number 2, and then you have a noise, which is going to be white noise, but you can override the default wiring of the number 3 and control something else. I'm going to show you in a second. But first, I'm going to be using the oscillator number 1. And I want you to take a look at the oscilloscope. As soon as I crank it up and I go over maybe 80%, it's going to start chopping the waveform. So we are clipping the output stage, at least on the mixer. So yeah, when you crank it up on both oscillators, or maybe one or the two, remember that when you go all the way up, you're going to be doing a little bit of clipping, which is, normal even with the other model of synthesizer, and I mean the other model. So the oscillator number 1, it's a little bit different from the oscillator number 2. You still have almost the same waveforms. You get a triangle, then you get a saw, you get a square, and then you get a pulse, a narrow pulse. In terms of range, you have your 32, 16, then 8, and then 4. Pretty easy and just normal stuff. You cannot fine-tune the oscillator number 1. You can only do it on the number 2, but you do have a fine-tune control. But this one is a global control. If I go up on the number 2 and I move this one down, we are detuning both oscillators, not just one. So you don't have independent control over the oscillator number 1. The oscillator number 2, it's just a little bit different. It's just more of the same, but it's a lot more powerful. I'm going to go down on the number 1, and I'm going to go up on the number 2. And you have the same range control, but it's a little bit different. Right here, it starts on 16. The other one starts lower on 32s. And it means that on this one, you can go higher. So you have a higher range. On top of that, you can fine-tune the oscillator number 2. And you can go to plus 7 semitones up, or down to minus 7 semitones down. Now, in terms of the waveforms, the oscillator number 2 has the same waveforms. We have the triangle, the saw, and then the pulse, and then the narrow pulse. The thing with the 2 is that you have combinations that you can keep going down, and you get a combination of a sub oscillator. And the sub is going to be a combination of a square sub oscillator and the waveform that you see right here. So if we use the triangle, it's going to be a combination of a sub square and triangle, saw, the sub square and the saw, sub square and then square, and then sub square, and then narrow pulse. So that's the main difference. And that's it pretty much. I'm going to show you how the oscillator sync works in a second. But first, just to finish, you have, again, like we discussed previously, your noise generator, and it says 3 / and then W noise. Well, W is white noise, and the 3, it's because it's the output or the mixer number 3. If I go up, of course, we get white noise. But with this one, what we can do, and with all the mixers, we can replace the white noise with something else. On the right side of the synthesizer, of course, you have your inputs and your outputs, and you have your mix 1, 2, and then 3. And this means that if we patch something in to the 1, 2, and the 3, we sever or we replace the default wiring, in this case is oscillator 1, 2, and then white noise, with whatever we want to use right here. So if I go to the mix 3 and I just, leave it unplugged and I play something and I'm, playing something and I'm only using the noise, we get pretty much nothing. Just pretty much nothing, because I'm cutting that connection. If I remove this one, we get the noise. Now, the cool thing is that you have an output for the pink noise, and of course, the white noise is the default. So you can patch in the output of the pink noise and put it inside of the, just on in of the mix number 3. And now, instead of getting white noise, we get pink noise. Another trick would be to maybe using the sub-oscillator. Right now, when we use the oscillator number 3, we hear a combination. Let me just maybe go down on the white noise and go up on the oscillator 3, on the oscillator 2. There we go. So maybe I want to get, I don't know, maybe a saw, right? Just I want a saw. But I want to control the level of the sub-oscillator that we get on the oscillator 2. But we cannot control the volume of both independently. Well, we can. If I take the out of the sub-oscillator, we are going to kind of route it to the mix of the number 3. So now if I play something, I'm getting the oscillator 2 right here, and I'm getting the sub on the number 3. So 2 is the oscillator 2, and then the 3 is the 3. And I'm still getting this sub combination of the oscillator 2, but we can control the levels a little bit more. That's the plan. On the oscillator side of things, you have a sync. This is something very true or very classic for just analog synthesizers. When you are using the sync, when sync is on, it means that the phase of the oscillator 2 will hard sync to the oscillator number 1. So the oscillator 2 now becomes the slave and the number 1 is the master. This means that the oscillator 2 cannot adjust its own pitch. It needs to follow and be in sync to whatever the oscillator 1 does. I'm going to go down on the noise and I'm going to do sync on. If I play it, we get something like that. And if I turn it off, we get something, that sounds pretty much the same. The thing is that this sounds really cool when you offset both oscillators. Right now, they're just completely the same. You don't get a cool sound. And I'm showing you this because maybe this is your first synthesizer and you're a beginner at this. So I'm just kind of teaching you the basics about sync. So right now, I get something. As soon as I start detuning, notice what happens. We get that sync sound. And I'm just changing the semitones, changing the frequency of the 2 that needs to align to the one that we have on the number 1. So if I make the 2 lower, this one higher, I offset it and maybe use a different waveform, you're going to start getting cool sounds. Now, a nice trick would be to take the frequency of the oscillator 2 and just modulate it like I'm doing it with my hand. You can maybe use an LFO just to do the modulation. Why not? Maybe you can go right here to the modulator, go up on this one. And now you can use the modulator from here and take the pitch. Just to maybe do a little bit of modulation. Now, a nice trick also is maybe patching in the envelope output right there on the outs and ins, and then patching to maybe modify the frequency of the oscillator 2. For example, what we want to do is to modulate this frequency every time that we play. So if I play a key, I want to do something like this. But I just don't want to do it with my hand. I want to use some of the ins and the outs. So I want to take the envelope out and then move the frequency. Right here, you have your envelope output. I know it's a little bit small, but it's kind of a wide synthesizer, let's say. So I'm going to patch the envelope out, and I want to modulate the frequency of the oscillator number 2, and you will get it right here. It says oscillator CV number 1, and then it says oscillator CV2. So this is the pitch of the oscillator. I'm going to be showing you this on a different video, more in detail, but right now we are taking out the signal out from the envelope and trying to modulate this. So now if I play it, we get something kind of a not that good, and it's because the signal of this one is a little bit stronger. We just need to modulate and change the values a little bit more. Still, when we do this, still it's too strong, right? So what we can do, we can go through an attenuator. I'm going to patch it out, and I'm going to go to the ATT, which is the attenuator. And what this does, it will attenuate the signal, whatever it is that we are doing right here. And instead of using that strong signal, we can just attenuate it and control it a little bit more. I'm patching in the out of the attenuator and going to the in of the CV. And if I play, now it's a little bit more controllable. And the attenuator right here controls how much modulation we apply to the frequency. So if I do just a tiny little bit, we get that sync sound. Okay, so that's how you use the oscillator sync. And like I said before, if you want to modulate this, you get that classic sound. Still, you don't need to use the ins and the outs. This is super useful to get more sounds out of the classic waveforms that you get, because usually right here you have a limited amount of sounds that you can create. But again, with the sync, just move the frequency. You can find the sweet spot, and once you do so, you have a different sound, and still you're using the only the number 2. If I wanted to, I can bring the number 1, and I can bring a little bit of noise. And notice I'm not even using the filter right now, and we get a cool sound. Coming up next, it's going to be the filter. I'm going to be using maybe just the oscillator number 1, just to make it simple. And I'm going to put it on 16 range, and I'm going to put it on a saw. So if I play it, it should, we should get something like that. Let me just maybe make it sustain all the way up, and maybe a little bit of, maybe no release for now. And we just, get a saw. So, okay, so the cutoff and the resonance are just very moggy, let's say. I guess that's what you get when you buy this. That's the plan. You can chop the high frequencies all the way down. And then you have your resonance control, which is going to be this one. As you go up on this one, it's going to kind of a bump, or give you a tiny little bump right there at the breakpoint. And we get that moggy, sound. Now, this is a ladder type of filter. So if you go down up on the resonance, you will notice that the low frequencies will be attenuated. And right now, I'm showing you this spectrum. Just take a look at the lower frequencies. As soon as I go up on the resonance, the lower frequencies will go down. And this is very normal for this type of a filter. You have a lot of different types of filters. This is a very classic of this type. So go up, you're going to lose a little bit of low end. That's normal. All right, so that's going to be the cutoff and then the resonance. Then you have your key tracking, and you have 3 positions: off, 1, or half, pretty much. So off means, of course, no key tracking. 1 is full, and then 1, 2 is half. Now, if you don't know what key tracking is, if again you're starting, and I'm going really slow, just explaining everything that we can do on this one, because again, maybe you're a beginner, this is your first synthesizer, and you don't know what the hell this is. Well, the key tracking is it will scale the cutoff depending on the key that you play. And I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that I'm going to be chopping around 50%, right? So 50% cutoff. If I play a higher key, or maybe I play a lower key, notice that it's always sounding, it sounds pretty dark. And that's normal because we are cutting a lot of the high frequencies. And the synthesizer doesn't care if we play a high key or we play a low key. It cuts the same way. So the key tracking will scale or just kind of behind the scenes move the cutoff or open the cutoff more if we play higher keys, or it will just go down and make it darker if we play lower keys. It always depends on how this was implemented, but if I do key tracking of 1, which is full, if I play a higher key, means that we can hear the higher frequencies now. If I go to off, it's pretty dark. And it's because this key, this value, the one that I'm pressing right now, it's scaling the cutoff to be a little bit more open. If I go to a lower key, it's of course opening less because it's a lower key. We don't need the high frequencies. So this is what we do. If you want for the cutoff to listen to the keys that you play, you need to maybe go to 1. If it's too bright, instead of going to 1, go to half. It's going to be less bright. Or maybe you just don't care about this. Well, if that's the case, just go to off. And there's no scaling, no key tracking. Then you have your ENV amount, which is going to be the envelope amount. And this is how we can modulate the cutoff filter. And just to give you an example, right now it's on 0. So we are just not modulating the cutoff filter. So when I play a key, whatever key, doesn't matter, what I want for this filter to do something like that. If I play a key, I want for the synthesizer to move the filter when I play a new key. Now, instead of doing this manually, what I want for the synthesizer to do it for me. So this is going to be the envelope amount. Whatever is that we use right here will modulate the cutoff up when we play a new key. Or notice that it says minus, we can go into negatives, which means that it will modulate it down instead of up. For example, I'm going to go right there on the line, on the second line that we get right here. And if I play something, I want for the cutoff, for the filter to do something like this and then go back. So, well, in that case, again, we go up, we allowed more of the envelope to do that modulation. So if I play something, what is it doing it for me? If I do nothing, it's not moving it at all. So it's just super dark. How it moves, well, it depends on the envelope that we use right here, the instructions that we use. And don't worry, again, I know that you might be a beginner. I'm going to give you a 101 on envelopes in a second. So if I want a slow ramping up, we provide a little bit of attack and it's going to be a little bit slower in going up. That's how it works. Now we could do the opposite. If I go up and just make it more open, I can go down and go into negatives. So now if I play it, it sounds completely different. So when I play a key, what it's doing essentially is going down, and then when I release the key, is going back up. That's pretty much what happens. So this is how the envelope amount works. You use your envelope to modulate your filter when you play a key. I'm going to put it on 0 and no resonance and maybe on 50%. Another thing that you get at the left is going to be the utilities. And right here it says high pass filter. Now this one, it's not part of the signal. This one, what it does is maybe you're going to just open it all the way. This one, what it does is going to cut the low frequencies instead of the high frequencies. It's a high pass. It cuts the lows. The thing is that, again, it's not part of the signal path. If you want to use it, well, then you need to use your ins and outs. I'm going to show you how to do it. Don't worry. Right now, what we need to do is we need to say, okay, so the sound that comes out from the oscillators goes to the filter. But instead of going to the filter, I want first for the sound to go to the high pass filter, and then the high pass filter go to the low pass filter. So we take the mixer out, and you can find it right here. It says mixer outputs right here. We can see mixer. So I patch the output of the mixer. So now the mixer needs to go to the high pass filter. So we go to the high pass in to this one. Now, of course, we are sending this sound of the mixer and going right here. And we are just kind of chopping the connection. So now we need to go from this one to the filter and just, keep the chain on. or just going. Let's go from the high pass out. You have it right here from the high pass out. And we need to go to the filter. And this is the filter in. I know that the names of the ins and the outs are just a little bit small, but that's how it works. So, okay, so now if I play it, notice that we get something. Maybe I'm gonna go down on the attack. If I play something, we are getting it. Maybe, you know what? I'm gonna add a little bit of reverb. Why not? The reverb sounds pretty cool. Especially when you want to use some drones or that type of deal. This one sounds fine. So, okay, so now I'm gonna be chopping the lows. If I go up, notice that we are getting it. I'm not chopping the highs, I'm chopping the lows. So the sound goes through the high pass filter, then goes to the filter, the low pass, and then goes out. Kind of like you would have on an MS-20, first go to the high pass and then go to the low pass. Now the thing is that, again, what happens if we want to do the opposite? Maybe I want for the sound to go to the low pass and then and only then go to the high pass. Well, we can do so. I'm gonna just unplug everything. There we go. And we just need to do the opposite. We need to take the filter, the output of the filter, go to the input of the high pass filter, and then go out. I'm going to take the out of the filter. We can see filter right there. So filter and then out. We go out from there, and then we go to the high pass in. We need to go in to this one. So we have it right here, high pass in. And then, of course, we take the output of the high pass, and we go again to the out, which is going to be the VCA. And VCA is like your main output. So I'm going to take the output of the high pass and go to the VCA. So now, if I play it, almost sounds the same, but now the signal path is a little bit different. We are going first to the low pass, and then we are going to the high pass. And it's, again, a little bit different. And of course, from here, we go to the output of the synthesizer. And okay, so since I know a lot of you may be starting on with synthesizers, I'm going to give you a tiny introduction to envelopes. It's something that you really need to master and you really need to know in order to create good sounds with your synthesizer. In this case, the envelope, it's this one, and you have an ADSR type of envelope, which is attack, decay, sustain, and release. Now, in the case of this synthesizer, this envelope controls how much you modulate the cutoff, but also how the volume goes out of the synthesizer. By default, on an analog type of synthesizer, and on some digital synthesizers as well, why not, the sound that comes out from the oscillators, what I'm going to play right now, it's constantly going behind the scenes. It's just outputting sound. So there's a barrier right here. This is just controlling how the volume goes out. And when I play a key, the envelope will open and it will let the sound pass. And if I release the key, it's going to close and, you get silence. So as you can see, an ADSR or just an envelope, it's really important because it controls how the sound goes out of the synthesizer. If you remove the envelope from the equation, you are going to get something like this, constantly open. And this is what the VCA on mode means. There's no envelope. So it's just constant sound. And when I play a key, then and only then it changes the pitch because I'm pressing different keys, but the sound never stops. As soon as I turn it on, the envelope will trigger or re-trigger when I play a key, and that's how we get that, sound when we only play a key. Of course, if you know how envelopes work, I'm not going to teach you anything new, so you can move forward to the next section. I'm going to be using the oscillator number 1 and down on the 2 and down on the noise, and the attack all the way down, filter all the way up, decay all the way down, and sustain all the way down, and release all the way down. So the attack is a time-based knob. The decay is based on time as well. The sustain is a level, and the release is a time. So time, level, and then release. And of course, there's a reason. Now, everything is completely down. So if I play a key, nothing happens because everything is just super short. So the synthesizer doesn't care that I'm playing a key because, no sound comes out. So then the first control is going to be the attack. If I go up, this is going to decide how long it will take for the sound to go up to full amplitude. And if we go up, remember this is a time-based control, is again how long. I'm going to go maybe to 50%. If I play a key, sound goes up, we can hear it, and then it goes down. If I do more, it's going to be slower. So it's going to take a long time to go up in volume. So I play a key, it's super smooth and slow. It reaches the maximum amplitude, and at some point, it's going to be done, and it's going to die. And let's just give it a second. It's pretty long and slow, and then the volume dies. And notice I'm still playing or pressing a key. So the attack again decides how long it's going to take for the sound to go to full amplitude when I play a key. I play it, it slowly goes up, maybe a little bit more, it slowly goes up, it reaches maximum, and then it's going to die. But maybe I just don't want for the synthesizer to kill the sound that abruptly. So that's going to be the decay. How long will it take for the sound, or how smoothly is going to go down when the sound reaches maximum amplitude? I'm going to, provide maybe the same amount. It's going to go up slowly. It reaches the max, and then it's going to go down, but it goes down very smoothly because we have some decay. If there's no decay, it's going to be super harsh in going down. I'm going to make it slower. I'm going to play it in 3, 2, 1. Slowly goes up. We reach the maximum attack, and then it starts going down because we enter the decay stage. So when the decay stage ends, the sound goes all the way down. And again, I'm still pressing a key. Now then, after the decay comes the sustain. And this ones, since they are time-based controls, they're gonna, it's gonna take a little bit of time to go up and a little bit of time to go down. This one is a level. Since we are going all the way down when the decay ends, on the sustain, we can decide if we want to keep the volume at some point. Right now, if I maybe put it right here, it means that the sound will go down, but it will not go down completely. It's going to stay somewhere in between. This is why the sustain is a level. It's sustaining at some point. So if I play it, it goes slowly up to the attack stage, then it goes to the decay, it's going to go down a tiny little bit, and at some point, it's going to stay where we decide with the sustain. Maybe I'm going to go a little bit down the sustain. It's going to go up slowly, then enter the decay stage. It's going to go down. And then, of course, since we are using some sustain, it's going to sustain at some level. A thing that you need to know with envelopes is the sustain, it's all the way up. Well, you're kind of bypassing the decay stage because you're telling the envelope that it should sustain when you have the maximum amplitude. So if I play it, it slowly goes up and it will never go down. It doesn't care about going down because the sustain is all the way up. If we want it to go down again, we need to go down the sustain. And that's how the attack, decay, sustain, and release, decay and sustain works. Now, the sound, I'm still pressing a key, it's going to go down, but it's sustaining there at some point. Now, I'm going to release the key because I'm still pressing it. I'm going to release it in 3, 2, 1, and the sound will die instantly. What happens if I want a smooth transition? I want a smooth going off. Well, that's going to be the release. What happens when I release the key? And this is, again, just like the decay and the attack, is a time-based knob. How long is going to take for the sound to smoothly go down? Maybe I'm going to provide maybe a little bit more sustain. So if I play a key, it's going to slowly go up to the attack, slowly go down to the sustain. It's going to get stuck on the sustain stage. And I'm going to release the key, and it's going to go to the release stage. And it's going to slowly or smoothly silence the sound instead of, going down really harsh when we go to the sustain stage. I'm going to release it, it's, dying instantly. If you want a very long release, of course, go up, and it's going to take a long time to die. Go up, then goes down. It's there in the sustain, and I'm going to release it on 3, 2, 1, and it is slowly going out. So the envelopes are fundamental to the sounds that you want to create, because maybe let's say that you want to create type of maybe a kind of a horn, or let's say something that maybe goes up in volume. It's a little bit slow, but not that slow. Well, then you need to use a little bit of sustain. And you get that. If you want a plucky sound, maybe no sustain, no release, and a tiny decay, and you get a plucky type of sound. Maybe you want something that maybe sounds more like keys, and you want a little bit of tail. Well, that's going to be the release. You need to do add more release. So again, the envelopes are really important, not just because they control how the volume goes out of the synthesizer, because you use the envelope to modulate the filter. The filter will follow whatever it is that we just did with the ADSR. So if I maybe go down on the cutoff and I say I want to use maybe full of the envelope amount, whatever we do on the ADSR, this, will do pretty much the same. Right now I'm saying no attack, tiny, maybe almost 50 decay, no sustain, and maybe more release. So this is doing that. It's going up and then going down, following the instruction of the ADSR. Now that I know that you know how an envelope works, because I just gave you a 101 on envelopes, we can talk about the VCA modes that you get right here. Now this has to do in how the output of the synthesizer is being controlled. Envelope, the first one, envelope, is the default. I press a key, the envelope gets triggered, and the ADSR will just take over. Then you have two more options, release, and then you have the on. I'm going to use the oscillator number 1, and I'm going to go just to show you how the release works. I'm going to put it on release, the cutoff on 50%. There's no modulation on the envelope. And I'm going to go to the envelope all the way down, all the way down, all the way down on the sustain, and down on the release. So since the ADSR, since the attack, decay, sustain, release are all the way closed, we should be getting a tiny blip. We shouldn't be getting any sound, but if I play a key, notice that, we are getting something. Why? Because everything is on 0. If I go to the envelope and I play something, we get a click because the ADSR is all the way closed. But, this doesn't happen when we are on the release. So the release mode, what it does, it will disregard the A, the D, and the S. It will disregard the attack, decay, and sustain. It will let the sound pass as long as we press and hold a key. And it's called the release mode because the only thing that it's listening from the ADSR is the release. If I release a key, maybe I'm going to open a little bit more. If I release a key, it's going to die very abruptly. And if I go up on the release and I release the key on 3, 2, 1, we are getting that release. It's going out really slowly. Now, if I go to the attack and I provide some attack, notice that nothing happens. It's just not listening to the attack, it's not listening to the decay, and of course, it's not listening to the sustain. It's only listening to the release, and that's why it's called release mode. So the release mode, it's kind of useful because remember the cutoff, this one, or maybe the envelope amount, will listen to the ADSR to do its modulation. But since we are not using the full power of the VCA and the ADSR, we can modulate the cutoff a little bit more freely, let's say. Or maybe we can use the patch bay and use the attack, decay, sustain, and release to modulate something else on the synthesizer. And we do all of this without affecting how the sound goes out, because remember, the synthesizer is not really listening to the attack, decay, and sustain. So we use it to use it on someplace else. Just to give you a tiny little example, we could maybe use the output of the envelope and use it on maybe just to modulate the pitch of the oscillator 2. Why not? I'm going to go to the input of oscillator 2, and I'm going to take the envelope out, which is this one right here, and I'm going to use it to modulate, the pitch. So I'm going to go to maybe 50% attack, maybe a little bit of decay, and I don't know, sustain 45%, let's say. I'm going to open the filter a little bit more. There we go. I'm going to go down on the oscillator 1, and I'm going to go up on the oscillator 2, because that's what we are modulating. So if I play a key, that is that we can, of course, hear how we are modulating the pitch of the number 2, but the volume, how the sound goes out, it's not being affected. We are, of course, modulating this with the ADSR, but we are not touching the output of the synth. And that's the whole point of the release mode. Then you have the on, and the on mode, like we discussed previously, is going to bypass the VCA, right? It's just going to bypass everything. So the sound, and I'm going to go down in volume, the sound that comes out of the oscillators and goes through the filters and everything else is going to go out directly. And I'm not playing a key, right? So it's not being controlled. And this is why also when it's on, it's called drone mode. Because, we can just leave the VCA open and just listen, or whatever it is that we are doing, and just, just use it like that. And maybe if I want, of course, to change the key or change the frequency that we are listening, we just play a new key and it will output that. But, again, we are not controlling how the volume of the synthesizer goes out through the envelope. Cool. So that's, again, the on the VCA mode, or also known as drone mode. Okay, before we talk about the ARP and the sequencer, we have the low frequency oscillator, which is the modulation section of the synthesizer. And it's just pretty simple. It's a basic type of synthesizer. Still, you can create a lot of different sounds with this. But the modulation is just pretty simple. But you need to know that everything that you generate right here, it's going to go out on this one. So if I provide modulation and I go to rate, or I do whatever is that you do right here, nothing is going to happen until you provide a modulation. And I'm going really crazy right here, and there's no modulation. Only when I provide some value with through the modulation is going to do something. All right, so I'm going to maybe go here. I'm going to leave it on almost 50%. And then you cannot modulate everything on the synthesizer. That's why you have the ins and the outs on the patch bay. No, so I'm using the oscillator number 1. And right here, you can modulate the filter. So if I go up, we use one of the waveforms, which is going to be a sine wave, just a ramp down, a ramp up, or a square, and we modulate the cutoff. I'm going to do so. It's going to provide a little bit of resonance. And how you modulate, how fast you modulate this through an LFO is going to be with the rate, how fast you go. There's the rate. You want to do more, well, then you go more aggressively. And if you want more, again, you just need to go to your modulation. So this one, this attenuator, it's really important because you can really go up, but if it's too aggressive, you go down and you can control it a little bit better. But that's it. This filter mod is taking this filter and doing something like this. Pretty much following whatever instruction that you provide on your waveforms. Right, that's the on and off type of deal. I'm going to use the sine wave for now. What else do you have? Well, then you have the pitch mod. So pitch is just pitch modulation. It's taking the pitch of both oscillators and just, doing something like that. Let's say. If you go really aggressively it's going to be really aggressive. A cool thing with the pitch mod is that you can go really fast and you get some cool sounds. Cool. If you go down, of course. You get a different tone, but going all the way down is up is a way of getting, again, different type of sounds, just like when we use the sync. Then you have the pulse width, and the pulse width, what it does is going to modulate the width of this square and the pulse waveform. So right now I'm using a saw, so if I play it, what is it? Nothing happens. Maybe I'm going to do no resonance and all the way up on the cutoff. It's going to be a little bit too bright, but that's fine. Maybe a little bit down so we don't clip. And now I'm doing some modulation to the pulse width, but of course I'm not using a pulse, so we get no modulation. To get it, we need to use either a square or maybe a narrow pulse. And we can see the modulation here, the modulation. We go really aggressively. You can hear that width being modulated. And like before, we can go really aggressive. And we get, again, cool sounds. Yeah, that's how it works. Now, if I use the other one, we still get it. We use the narrow pulse, we get the modulation. And in terms of the oscillator number 2, we get completely the same. If I go to square, you can see the modulation. If I go to narrow pulse, we get it. And if I go to the combinations of sub and oscillator 2, we get it as well. Right. So that's it. This is what you can do with the LFO. Now it's time to talk about the ARP and the sequencer. And the ARP and the sequencer, they have shared controls. They work very differently depending on which mode you are. Let's first start with the ARP. To make the ARP work, you need to make sure that you are on ARP. If I play a key or maybe I play a chord, nothing happens. So you need to press play to make the ARP work. I'm going to press play and it's blinking. As soon as you play something, it's going to go steady and you get the ARP. Simple as that. Of course, the rate will make it go faster or you can go slower. Now, you cannot go super slow and you cannot go super fast, but enough. Cool. Now then you have the order. And the order means that how it will play the arpeggio. And by default, this is an as-played type of arpeggiator. It means that it will remember the order you press the keys. So if I play a low key, a high key, then in the middle, and then a different key, notice it's kind of remembering the steps or the order I play the keys, and it's just doing that. And it's, how it works by default. Maybe it's a little bit too dark, I'm going to go a little bit brighter. So if I just play a triad, we get a triad, but then if I add more notes, it's respecting that order. Cool. Then, of course, you have the up and down. And this one works just like the other one. It's an as-played type of deal, but still, it will go up and down. That's why it's called up and down. The other mode is going to be the random, and as you could guess, it's just, random. Whatever it is that I play, it will just go randomly. Then just like any other common arpeggiator, you have the octave. So by default, if it's on 1, whatever it is that you play, it's just going to play it. But then if you do 2, it's going to repeat whatever it is that I'm playing and then repeat it 1 octave higher. If I do 3, it's going to be just 2 octaves higher. Now, this also works if you're doing random, you're doing, up and down, or you're doing order. So, yeah, very cool. Very simple, simple controls, but just powerful, let's say. Okay, so right now, in order to get the ARP, I need to press the keys to make it work. If I release the keys, of course, the ARP dies. Now, I'm going to maybe go to just 1. So right now, if it's on play, I play something, I can go right here and just press the hold. And this will hold the ARP for me. I'm gonna release the keys in 3, 2, 1, and the ARP still plays. Still, when you're doing this, you can maybe play a new key, and it will erase whatever it is that you had, and it will just repeat whatever new keys you entered. Now, a cool thing is that when you release, and of course you're holding, you can press the play again, and it will pause the the arpeggiator. But if I press play again, it will resume the ARP, so you don't have to enter the keys again or the notes again. You can safely pause it, do whatever it is that you need to do, and then just keep it going. And remember, again, it's holding. I'm not playing the keys. We're holding the keys physically. Another cool feature is going to be the tap. So if I play a chord and I play it, I should be getting the ARP. There we go. I can just go right here and just tap. It is like a tap tempo, right? It's going to recognize. And you need to tap at least 3-4 times in order to get it. Notice that whatever is that you did right here is going to translate it to the rate. So you can see on the light right here how fast it's going. And you can modify it from here if you want after you do the tap. Now the tap is going to stay on, but you can still tap again, and it's just going to accept the order. And if you want to remove or just turn this off, just press and hold for about 5 seconds, 3 seconds, and it's going to go off. And that's it. That's the ARP. As you can see, it's a very simple arpeggiator. You don't get something super complex. If you really want maybe a super powerful ARP and sequencer, maybe you want to get something else. The ARP and the sequencer, in my opinion, of course, this is something that you get extra, maybe a bonus that you get with the synthesizer. So on this device, you can store up to 3 sequences. You get them right here, the 1, 2, and the 3. And whatever it is that you select is whatever you're going to be using. I'm going to be using the number 1. To create a sequence, you need to go to rec. Right here at the top, you select rec. And if you're using the number 1 or the 2 or the 3, you're going to be entering notes for that sequence. I'm going to be using the number 1. Once you're on rec, what this will do, it will be listening to your keys, and you can enter up to 256 steps per sequence. So in conclusion, you have 3 sequences with 256 steps. Now, it doesn't say in the manual how many steps, and I just kind of tested it a little bit, and I think it's 256. And I am assuming this because the other synthesizer, I mean, I'm not going to tell the brand, but the other one, it has 256 per sequence. So I guess this does the same. If you are on rec and you selected a sequence, the only thing that you need to do to create a new one is to enter notes. That's it, to enter steps. Of course, if you do this, it will wipe or erase whatever is that you had from before. So make sure that you really want to erase the previous sequence. Now, just to make it easy, I'm going to just enter notes, and I'm going to go up in range, maybe on a scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to 8. Once you're done recording your sequence, the only thing you need to do is just to move the switch to sequence. And notice that the play will blink. If it's blinking, it's because you have a sequence to play. And if I press play, nothing happens. And if I press play, it's kind of a waiting for you to play it. So what you can do, you can press a key, and I'm holding a key, and it will play the sequence. That's simple. As soon as I release the sequence will stop playing. I can just play different keys, and it will transpose the sequence, of course, to whatever key I'm pressing. Just, super cool. Just like the ARP, you can hold if you want to. I'm going to press hold, and is that nothing happens? Well, if I play something, just pressing one key, I'm going to release it, and, no hands, and it's just, playing that sequence. Of course, we can do the same. We can play a different key, and it will transpose it. And of course, it's still holding it. Cool. Now, then you have the direction. And we know how this works with the ARP. Well, here it works, still works. It goes up and down. And then if you want random, it will, do the random. Right. Now, if you want to stop it, well, just press play and it will just, stop it. And if you want to resume and you're holding, press play again and it will just resume the playback. When you record a sequence, you can do ties and you can do rests. And also you can do accents. So a tie means that the envelope, this one, will not re-trigger on that step. So if you enter the same note on 2 steps, well, it will be like creating a longer note. And of course, I'm going to show you. I'm going to go to the rec and I'm going to stay on the sequence number 1. And I'm just going to add ties. I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, and then I want a tie right there. And I'm going to add the same note. And I'm just going to keep going. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to add a tie, same note, tie, same note, and then I'm just going to keep going. Once you're done, you go back to sequence, and if I play one key, notice that the notes that have a tie are just longer. That's how it works. Now, like I said before, what this does, it means that it will not re-trigger the envelope. We hear a longer note because I'm entering the same note. If I do the same with different notes, and I'm going to do so right now, I'm going to enter 1, 2, I'm going to do a tie, and then just enter different notes. Instead of getting that longer note, it will sound like and I'm going to put it in hold, it will sound like a legato. And this is, very true and normal to all sequencers. Right. The other thing that you can do is to add rests. And what a rest is pretty much a silence on that step. So it will not skip it, but there's silence. And I'm going to show you again how to do it. I'm going to go to rec and stay on the sequence number 1. And I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to add a rest. And I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to add a rest. And now I'm going to go down and I'm going to do pretty much the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to add rest, 1, 2, 3, 4, and rest again. So now if I go back to the sequence and I just play a key, it's a little bit choppy because, we added a rest. Rests on, different places on the sequence. Cool. Again, all the sequencers can do something like this. On top of the ties and the rests, you can add accents. This depends on the sequencer. How it works right here is that it will provide a higher velocity value to that step. The thing is that if we program an accent, and it's just pretty simple to do, it's just like adding ties and rests, nothing is going to happen. I'm going to just add, and then maybe an accent, and I'm going to keep moving forward, and then I'm going to add an accent, and then accent, and that's it. And I'm gonna exit and just play it back. Maybe I'm gonna go a little bit faster. What is it? We cannot hear the accents. Maybe I'm gonna go a little bit brighter. No, we cannot hear it. And it's because, again, it works with velocity. And right now, we need a way to tell the synthesizer that we want a higher velocity for some of the steps and what that velocity will affect. And by default, it's not affecting anything. That's why, I have the camera like this. Right here, you have the velocity out. Maybe it's just a little bit way too far. Let me just put the camera closer. There we go, a little bit better. Now I'm gonna play the sequence, and behind the scenes, let me adjust this a little bit more. I'm gonna do a little bit of envelope amount, just a little bit. So now, some steps will output higher velocity. So we can take the velocity out. And again, some of the steps will output a higher value. So maybe we can go to, I don't know, the control voltage of the oscillator, and it will modulate the frequency. Now, maybe when the ARP is super fast, we cannot tell apart, but if I go super slow, we can hear that the steps with the accent are a little bit different. Maybe we can do to the cutoff amount. Notice that the notes that have no accent are super quiet, but the ones with the accent are just a lot brighter. Now, of course, we can maybe go through an attenuator and just control this a little bit better. Just to give you an example, I'm going to go here, and then again, go here to the cutoff. And now with the attenuator, we can do just a tiny little bit. and it's just a little bit more obvious, right? All right. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is that back here in the sequence, when you create a sequence and you add ties and rests and accents and everything else, there's kind of a way, there's almost no way to edit the sequence, but you really can. If you create a sequence, I'm going to do so right now, and I'm going to go to rec. I'm going to maybe add some ties, rests, and accents. I'm going to add something dumb, it doesn't matter, and then I'm going to add whatever. I'm just going to randomly go through different notes and add something, and then maybe an accent, and I'm going to go back. So if I go back to the sequence, I'm going to press hold and I play it. Maybe I'm going to go and make it a little bit faster. Now we can hear there's a lot going on in the background. What if I want to go again and just going to pause it? I want to go and edit. Well, if it's playing, you have it in hold and it's playing, you can go to rec. And right here, it will show you what you did in terms of ties, rests, and accent. If you go super slow, you can really see it. So while the sequence is going, you can even, maybe remove the ties or just add an accent and so on and on. You can even maybe enter a different note and just change the note. But you need to go really slow, right? So you can catch that step and modify it in real time. So if I wanted to add ties, just like that, I could do it. And on the next sequence, I'm going to have a lot of ties. As you can see, again, we have a lot of ties. And you need to catch the steps. Even if I wanted to maybe just change the sequence to the same note, and I'm doing it so, when you go back, and I'm going to make it faster, notice that I really edited the sequence. This is the only way you get to edit the sequence. It's not that good, but again, like I said before, this sequencer is just a not full-blown sequencer. It's just an additional bonus thing that you get with the synthesizer. And okay, so that's pretty much it. This is what you can do with the main panel. And to understand the inputs and outputs and to use them, you really need to handle or to know how everything works right here. I'm going to be uploading a new video just showing you how the inputs and outputs work one by one with examples. And I'm going to upload a few more videos just creating different sounds and different patches with this synth. If you like what I do, please like the video. This channel is supported by viewers only. If you want to buy me a coffee to say thanks and help the channel keep going on, you can. You have links at the description for PayPal, YouTube Thanks, and Patreon.